All right. Today we are going to be talking to one of our success stories. Her name is Sophie, and she has a really interesting situation that she's going to take us through. And I say that knowing nothing about her situation, of course. Yeah, I was telling her before we started recording that usually like an hour before we start recording, I kind of like familiarize myself with the success story, but I had an appointment before this and I didn't so much do that. So I am going to be just like a listener here, and you are going to take us through your situation. But how are you doing, Sophie?
I'm good. My ex and I are officially back together now as of probably a month ago, I think. And actually, we are currently making plans to get an apartment together. So that's
That's
the
big.
whirlwind of my life at the moment. But
Okay. All
yeah, I
right.
would say that it was almost too successful in some ways.
Well, that's a good problem to have, though.
Yeah.
So why don't you take us back to the dark ages when the breakup actually occurred?
Ooh, the before times. Yes.
Yeah. Is
So,
that a South Park reference?
a little maybe.
Okay.
Um, so this was actually our second breakup.
Okay.
If you want to count like official breakups.
Well, let's
We
let's go back to the first one. That's interesting to me. Let's go
yes,
back to the really before times.
really before time. So we started dating in January of 2020. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship myself, and I don't know, like that had been 2 years, and I was pretty confident that I wanted to move on. So we started dating. We dated for about 3 months, and we started running into some issues. So I think the issues I identified initially were we had some religious differences and just some other, like, we weren't on the same page about a bunch of things. He is an avoidant attachment style.
Okay.
I think dismissive avoidant. I know he goes to therapy now, so he's talked about it a little bit. And then I lean more towards the anxious,
Okay.
which makes
So
sense.
you were just like the prototypical couple here.
Pretty much. Like it's definitely explosive chemistry at the beginning, but as soon as things start getting
Hard,
into the,
basically. Yeah.
hitting on some of your core stuff, like we hit the rocks as expected, I guess. So we did end up breaking up in May of 2020.
So COVID is happening here.
Yes,
Did
COVID
that
is
have any
happening.
impact on the situation at all?
I think it did. He's very extroverted. I'm not. I think we spent a lot of time just together, not doing anything separately, and we were getting a little bit sick of the routine as well. So things didn't seem to be going the way that we had hoped they would
Okay.
go when we first started dating. You get this great vision of the future where you're gonna hang out with your significant other and all your friends, and COVID really did complicate that, I think, because there just wasn't anything that we could do about it, and both of our mental health kind of took a little bit of a dive as well. So we broke up, and I, of course, like every other poor girl out there, start Googling. I'm like, what am I going to do about this? I have to get him back somehow.
Gotta
So I
fix it.
found a program. I don't remember what it was called, to be honest with you.
Shame on you. This is the no, I'm
It
just
was
kidding.
not, it was not your program. But I started getting like advice over email, like you should send a closure letter and you should do all these things.
Oh,
And I was like,
okay. That seems like a great idea.
I didn't like I didn't like the format of the advice I was getting. I liked some of the introspective stuff where I was writing about the process and the breakup, but like other than the journaling, I felt like I was getting advice that wasn't hitting the mark for me. So I found your website shortly after that. It was maybe like a week after, 2 weeks after. I bought the program and I embarked on my first journey with ERP.
Hmm.
So that actually ended up working because we actually had agreed to like a no contact period. So there was 21 days and he kept breaking it because he just kept wanting to talk to me.
What about
We
you?
didn't part on bad terms.
Did you
So
stick to it?
I did eventually complete a successful no contact. The group was really good with making sure that we kept it business only because I did work with him at the time. So we kept it to work projects only, and he was very curious as to what I was doing at that time. So following all of my social media still. Everything was pretty good. And we actually got back together kind of hastily. And some of the advice that you gave me actually after I talked to you once was make sure that you don't fall back into the same patterns. And I think I was just
Did I do that on a Facebook Live?
No, I don't think so. Well, maybe it was. I think it was a Facebook Live at one point, but you basically said, like, don't rush it. Just be, steady with the progress that you've made. Altogether, it took us like a month or a month and a half to get back together. So it was basically like just after no contact. He was like, can I call you? And we thought we'd try again. So I kind of count that as like my practice run with therapy. I had no idea how much more difficult and much more painful trying a second time would be.
Okay.
So this is like where it gets interesting. So we got back together. Things were okay, but we were still running into fundamental. In my mind now that I look at it, I think they were related to attachment style. They were related to communication style issues, that some of the overlying stuff like personal differences or opinions were kind of hiding the deeper problems in a sense. So even when we worked on that and we settled our religious differences, we settled a whole bunch of other differences, we thought things were going to be different, but they weren't, because ultimately our underlying disagreements, the reasons we were disagreeing and how we were disagreeing, were the actual problem in my mind.
Can you give us like an actual example of what that looks like? Not like a super serious one, but maybe like a surface level one, so people can kind of understand what you mean when you're talking about the underlying disagreements here.
Sure. So I think for him, personal freedom is a big thing. Like, he doesn't want to have to think the same way as me. He does not want to have to do things.
So he likes being independent.
Very independent. He's
very avoidant.
One of the most independent people I've ever met in my life. Like, he has a very sweet side to him where, like, if he chooses to be engaged and, be involved in something, he's definitely there 100%, but he has to be able to make those decisions emotionally for himself and not feel like he's being pressured.
Okay.
So it just, for me, I was pressuring him about some of our differences. And then when I talked about it in therapy, I was like, okay, this isn't a big deal for me. But there were still things that I kept pushing about, and
what were some examples of those things?
So he actually was friends with his ex-girlfriend before me.
Okay,
still.
That would bug me. I get it.
It bothered me. It did.
It's like the being their method inverted,
I saw right through it too. I was like, I don't think that she's here for wholly, reasonable reasons. And when we had broken up, he had gone to her for some comfort, and I guess they had like made out or whatever. And he told me
so some physical connection there as well, unfortunately, after the breakup.
And that was hard for me because they only dated for like 2 months maybe, but all of his relationships have been like 2-3 months. Like, he has not been able to sustain a long-term relationship at any point before me. So when we broke up, the fact that he was talking to his ex again was, to me, a big deal. I was like, that doesn't.
I knew it.
So we moved on, disagreeing on that still, and we kept seeing he has a really, in my opinion, not a great friend group, and she's well ingrained in that, so we saw her a lot. And it kept getting under my skin. And then there was some other things with some other girls where, like, he had been friends with some girls that he'd been seeing before. And I don't think there was ever anything there, but I think that, true to a lot of avoidance, he likes to reminisce, he likes to hold on to things, likes to hold on to old relationships, likes to hold on to like old keepsakes from relationships too, which was weird to me because I was like, no, I think I should be the only important person in your life. And it all kind of exploded eventually. And what I didn't realize was at the time, um, I had actually told him at one point before we broke up, this was maybe a month or two before we broke up, I want you to stop talking to your ex-girlfriend. Like,
So you
that's it.
gave him like the ultimatum essentially.
I
Like do
did.
this or else.
Yep. And I
Did
said, you need to
you
unfollow
clarify
her.
what else would happen if he didn't do it?
Well, I mean, I did threaten a little bit. I was like, you know what? If you need to unfollow her on social media since she seems to interact with you a lot on there. I'm not comfortable with this relationship as it stands, and I'll take my things and go
Okay.
if we don't sort this out.
True
So
ultimatum then.
it really was.
I
And he
can't
was
tell you
like,
how often I'll interview people and hear this like thing and they'll say, "Yeah, I gave him an ultimatum." And I'll be like, "Okay, like, well, how?" And they say, "Well, you do this," but they don't really clarify what else will happen if they don't follow it, but you did.
I did. I was really at that point quite ready to just, because she had been tagging him in things and other things. And every time I would ask him, he was like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, she's just, interacting with me and we don't talk about things or anything." And I was like, okay, I don't believe you. But um, eventually it came to a head. He unfollowed her on social media after I asked him like 3 separate times. And the, I guess that was that. We broke up in April of 2021. And this was after several like mock breakups almost, where we were like really getting to the end of our rope with what we could handle. He felt like I was pushing him for a further commitment. And I was, because the more insecure I got, the more I felt like I needed to push things like moving in together and, fidelity and all these other things as I kind of saw them. I think I did make a big deal about things that weren't necessarily a big deal, but I was definitely putting a lot of pressure on him there.
Okay. So let me have this straight. You go through the breakup. So you go through the breakup initially in 2020, like all during COVID. And then he kind of moves on to this other girl that is his ex. And so like this period of time between when that happens and this, what we're talking about here in 2021, are you just like talking at this point, or had you gotten back together again?
So
I'm just trying to clarify the
like
timeline.
right now?
No. Okay. So you mentioned in 2020, you kind of started the relationship.
Yeah.
And then you ended the relationship a few months after this all happens. And the issues in that were that he was constantly tagging his ex, right? And like, there's some issues with disagreements and things like that. Timeline wise, how long were you broken up before you had like tried to do anything? Are you still like talking about the actual relationship and the problems with it? I'm just trying to clarify the timeline.
Yeah, so we got back together in July, I think, of 2020. So it was like May to July.
May to July. You got back together very quickly and then went through another very abrupt breakup.
Yes, and I mean, I kind of expected it, but we lasted another 8 months or so just in this.
So there's been like 2 breakups that have happened here. The first one happened in 2020. Yeah. Like, who initiated that? Was that you?
He broke up with me.
Okay. And the second one
saying, "Oh, like I can't." What was it? He's like, "Oh, like I feel like I can't love you the way that you need to be loved, and we've got some differences, and he sort of saw it as a bit of a merciful thing."
Okay.
And same with this time around. He broke up with me and gave me some of the similar reasons, although perhaps a little bit more angry.
but this time, was it so? All right. So the 2 breakups, this period in between the 2 breakups, that's when he had the makeout session with the ex-girlfriend, correct? Yes. What happens after the second breakup? Does he go running back to her again?
So I actually noticed that he followed her on Instagram the day after we broke up. He deleted all her pictures and then he refollowed her on Instagram. And I was so mad. Like,
was that like a revenge thing, do you think? Like, I'm going to show her?
No, because they had been talking this whole time apparently, and I
Mhm.
didn't know that. He had told me they weren't talking. So him following her back on Instagram was just like, I can officially now
Verify.
be your friend
Right.
or whatever. So I didn't know if there was anything there or not. But nevertheless, like he really just doesn't like to have anyone tell him what to do. So I think for him, he was like, I'm just going to follow her back on Instagram. So I actually did the same thing.
You
I
followed
followed,
her on Instagram?
I did.
That's interesting.
I like drama a
Okay.
little bit. So I knew based on how he had described all of his previous breakups. So he described his breakup with her very negatively. He said that event, like he basically snapped at her for demanding too much of his time and demanding too much emotional investment. Um, and he broke up with her over the phone and blocked her everywhere, and then basically told all of his mutual friends that she was crazy.
Okay.
So I mean, I probably should have taken that as a bit of a red flag myself, but I did this time around. I was like, this is probably what's going to happen to me. So I thought to myself, okay, I need to talk to Anna. So I did start coaching with Anna a little bit,
Beautiful.
but I
Okay.
made the decision sort of defensively to try and ingratiate myself to sphere of influence a little bit, including some people that I had been not on great terms with before.
Yeah, you
Including
mentioned at the time the friend circle was not someone that you were like, were people that you were fond of, correct?
No, I didn't like them. I made it clear I didn't like them for him. Again, he values his relationships. So he wasn't happy with that. So I did start trying to repair a couple of my relationships there. He was very confused, actually, and pretty upset because he felt like it didn't give him a place to vent about me or the breakup after it happened. So I
He's
got,
got a new girlfriend for that, right? You can vent to
well, yeah, right. So
her.
I don't think they were ever actually like officially back together, but they certainly seem to be entertaining that as an option. So I reached out to her. I basically said, look, I apologize for how I treated you during our relationship. It'd be nice to get coffee sometime. And I did eventually get coffee with her during the period that we were broken up. And she basically said, yes, he has been pursuing a relationship with me for, before you guys broke up, actually, like pursuing I guess, a friendship aggressively. Um, and she didn't know that I wasn't cool with it, apparently. So,
I don't know if I believe that, but
well, yeah, I don't know if I believe that either, but she was like, well, I figured you must have been because he was, interacting with me, but I never bothered to check with you. And I was like, okay. So I think I did everything wrong, though. I had, confrontation with the other woman. I had,
it's interesting. So
drama with the
we're seeing
friend.
the anxious behaviors sort of take root here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I went full panic because I didn't know what to do. And he was pretty upset with me for that. I thought it was genius. I was like, I'll stay in his life by being invited to everything by his friends. And he was so pissed about that. He was like, I need time. So he reached out to me about a month after the breakup. So I visited his roommate. And she and I were friends before we were even dating. But I visited his roommate. We went to a park sort of nearby the house that he lived at. And I got some very angry text messages in probably late May, early June. And breakup was April 26th. So a little bit of time had elapsed. I was in no contact the whole time. I basically went into no contact right after the breakup.
Okay.
Because I
How
knew for my
long
first
were
time.
you shooting for? Like 30 days, 45 days?
No, 45, given that it was our
Okay.
second breakup. And also it just ended very badly. It was,
Okay.
to me, I felt like the breakup on April 26th, 2021 was out of the blue. I knew we had issues. We had committed to sort of working on them. And he had started talking a lot more optimistically. He had started looking at apartments for us to move into. He had started like really trying harder with the relationship, but at the same time saying, here are my boundaries, and if you cross them, I will break up with you. So it was kind of like, I felt like there was a lot of mixed messages going on. And then one weekend where we spend weekends together, I was over and he was acting really weird, and he kept being like really combative with our friends, and like everything I suggested he didn't want to do. And I just had this like feeling that he was going to break up with me. So he started the conversation on April 26th in the evening, basically saying to me, I think I'm having some doubts and I may just need to work through them. And like less than an hour later, we were basically screaming at each other, and he's like, I'm done. I'm not getting back together with you ever again. Like, this isn't what I want for my life.
Okay.
You know, I'm glad that you're reinforcing my decision to dump you right now. Like,
Okay.
it was very hurtful.
It did not end well.
It didn't. And I left at 3:30 in the morning, just crying, and everyone knew about it, and it was a big mess. So
you go right into no contact.
Yes.
45 days. And you're basically poaching a sphere of influence at this point during the 45 days. Okay.
So that, I feel like maybe would be something that I would have changed. Maybe not doing that.
Well,
because
then again, maybe it worked, but let's see how it plays out.
Right. I thought that it was going to be better than it went. And so initially, like a week after the breakup, I felt like I needed to vent. So I vented to some ex-friends of his that were, I know, bad idea, right? Terrible decision.
Yep. You can't see me, but I'm shaking my head really bad.
So I vented to some ex-friends of his, and I thought the information wouldn't go anywhere. It did, ultimately.
That is very naive of you. So
it was.
Don't you know people love gossip like more than anything else?
Yep. So they are still, I mean, they're still not friends, but they had some mutual friends, and they spread the information to some mutual friends, who then spread the information to.
It's like a game of telephone. So it's not the actual, like, you ever play that game of telephone? You know, by the time the message gets to the end of the line, it's like different. So I'm imagining something like that.
That's exactly what happened, because a lot of the details that got back to him were not even at all accurate to what happened.
Yeah, people like to put their own spin on things, and they clearly did that.
Pretty much. So the first reach out I got from him was a little bit before my no contact was supposed to end. And it was after I saw his roommates to hang out. And he texted me immediately after I left the house. Apparently, according to his roommate, he was ready to come out onto the front lawn and confront me and basically say, you need to give me space because you haven't given me space. So to him, even though I was giving him space, I wasn't talking to him. Me interacting with his sphere of influence was a big no-no for him, because he still didn't feel like he had emotional space to process.
Possessive over them.
Yep. So I ignored those text messages per the advice of the mods. I did not engage, because he basically said to me, hey, we need to talk. And I ignored it. And then about 40 minutes later, he was like, if you don't have time today, that's fine, but we do need to have a discussion. And I ignored that one. And then he finally sent me a text late in the evening saying, all right, you know what, I thought we could have handled this differently, but you've made your choice, sort of. And then he blocked me everywhere. So I was blocked on Facebook, Instagram, both accounts.
What about phones?
So I don't know if I was ever blocked over text because I didn't answer those messages, but I was blocked on WhatsApp. I was blocked on whatever.
Pretty safe bet you're probably blocked at one point on the phone.
I think I was blocked everywhere, to be honest. He was really mad. He was done.
See, I'm sitting here super excited because it's very rare that we actually get to talk to someone who was blocked and got out of it and got back with their ex, like to this extent. So
Yes.
I just perked up here.
Yeah, I was fully blocked on everything. And I'm trying to remember. I think the next, so I completed my no contact, and then Anna basically said, it ends kind of like before your birthday, but maybe you could give it a little bit of time after your birthday.
Smart.
He did not reach out for my birthday, but I
Well,
kept
you're blocked.
interacting.
You're blocked.
Well, exactly, right? I'm blocked everywhere. So I actually ran into him in person by accident. And it wasn't
Now, when you say by accident, do you mean really by, or is there a part that manufactured it? Let's be honest here.
I felt like it was by accident.
Okay, so it's manufactured by Sophie here. How did you manufacture this?
So
there's no shame in it. Flirting is playing games. That's how it works.
So his best friend, Josh, that's a pseudonym,
Okay.
and his girlfriend,
So
Angela,
Josh and the girlfriend.
yeah, were they invited me over for my birthday because I'm friends with them, and I had been seeing them after the breakup. Mostly his girlfriend, Angela, is my friend, and she was very insistent that they would continue seeing me after we broke up. She's like, we don't play sides, whatever. So she was like, I would love it if you come over. I would love it if you come over for your birthday. I know you don't have anywhere else to go. Because my friend group and his friend group were one and the same, unfortunately. I did not maintain an independent friend group. And after the breakup, that kind of like occurred to me. I was like, crap, I don't have any friends. So don't do that. Don't get lost in a relationship where you don't have any friends, because that was mistake number one for me. But I went over for my birthday and I had cake and whatever, and I took some photos.
So it was your birthday. You get invited over by Angela, who is a rock star, and just so happens your ex is there.
So no, he wasn't there, but he lives like 2 streets over or whatever, like on the other side of, there's like a bridge that separates like 2 little communities, and
it's like Romeo and Juliet here,
like 5 minutes away.
You're the girl across the bridge.
I go over there and I have a great time, and I'm leaving somewhat late. I was like, okay, there's no way I'm gonna see him. It's like 11:30 p.m. That would be weird. So, but people had known I was going over there for my birthday, so I think maybe there was some element of he probably heard about that. So I get into my car and I see his car like driving past, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's definitely him. So
you get
this is where it gets embarrassing for me.
No, let's do it. Let's hear it.
I wanted to see if it was him or not. So what I did was I get into my car, spin around, and I start ripping through the area like to catch up to him, essentially.
Oh, so you're driving and you pass him like 2 ships in the night, and then you say, oh, that ship looks cool, and then you turn around and drive after him. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So he ended up behind me at the light.
Whoa, so you were going fast.
I was.
So you passed him.
I did.
And then you lane change in front of him.
Yeah. So
okay.
Anyways,
I see where you see the embarrassing part on that now.
The worst part about it wasn't even that. It was the fact that my windows were open and I was playing my music.
No shame.
My windows were open, but I had a
what music do you have playing? Like Metallica or something as you're going through this, or Ozzy Osbourne?
It was really loud. It was probably rap music, whatever.
Rap, okay.
But I
got some Eminem playing.
I was Stan.
Lose yourself,
No, I wanted to give off the impression that I was nonchalant about the whole thing, which in retrospect was crazy and not nonchalant.
Okay, so nonchalant is like you don't turn, maybe you like turn around and just
You
stay
find a
behind
different way
them.
to go home. Yeah, exactly. So I guess he was headed back to his place across the bridge. I don't really know why he was in that neighborhood in the first place, and it seemed really weird, like a coincidence that we even ran into each other. But I did have to go. I technically had to go the same way as him, so I maybe just sped up a bit to get there. um, but at one point, we're both like he's trying to get away from me in his car. I am trying to see if it's him. And in the chaos, my birthday balloon that had a little tiny anchor on it flew out the back window, or flew out the window and smacked his windshield. So it's like
You can't
happy
make this
birthday
up.
written
Oh
across
my
it
God.
on my birthday, whacks his windshield. So he basically speeds up, gets around, and then like drives off to his road. So I know it was him. And I go home from there. So I think, okay, I'm gonna hear from him, but I don't. So basically, I drive home and I wait a couple of days to post the pictures to Instagram. Because I thought I'm fully blocked everywhere. It's not like it makes a difference. He's definitely not checking or anything like that. And I posted the photos to Instagram, tagged my friend, not his, but obviously it was his house. And at one point, I had this habit, which again, I don't recommend, of checking to see if I was unblocked. So I would check every couple of days just to see
Okay.
if I was going to be unblocked or if I was. And I kept posting to Instagram like I was unblocked, even though I wasn't. So that advice is really good. Just keep posting per normal because you don't know what they see or don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I actually caught him unblocking me, and
And
then
then
I was
reblocking
blocked
you.
like 5 minutes later. So I was
So
like,
he's doing the drive-by where he like unblocks you. Oh, okay, block again.
checks on and then blocks again. And I was convinced there was no way that he was going to look at any of my social media because I was like, after everything that he's mad at me for, after all of my weird, crazy behavior, there's no way he's checking on what I'm doing. But apparently that was the case. So he sees the photos posted a couple days after my birthday, and he reaches out again and he's like, I don't think you understood me last time. You really need to stop seeing my friends.
How does he reach out to you? Is this through text
This is over
or
text. Yeah,
okay?
he texted me and he basically said, I would like to meet in person to discuss this. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
So you're out of no
So,
contact at this point?
my first one, yes. And then I'm trying to remember. I think I broke no contact.
Okay.
Maybe, or I didn't start
It's
texting phase. I basically
super
just,
common.
yeah, I think I broke no contact. Maybe it was like a 45-day one, and then I was supposed to extend it based on
Mhm.
the angry text messages that I got. So I broke the extended past 45 days or whatever. And I got into it over text with him about our mutual friends, and we started arguing. And he basically was like, I shouldn't be having these conversations with my dear friends over an X of a year and a half. Like, he was
Okay.
just really mad. And I finally said, okay, like, I'll give you a phone call, I'll explain. So again, not what I was supposed to do, but I called him and I talked to
You're
him.
going up that value ladder in a very strange way, but there
It
is
was weird.
some.
So I called him and I explained my point of view. I basically said, look, these are my friends too, and I don't think that you should have the monopoly on them. And
It's like parents arguing over kids or something.
that's
It's
what it felt
really
like. It was very immature. So I essentially then yeah, I basically explained myself. I felt like I did really well on the phone call, and I debriefed it with Anna later. The gist of it was he kept reiterating his points, but then he kept throwing little things in there like, oh, like if we were to get back together, or I just needed time, or I need some space and things like that. And I just kept ignoring all of it. I stuck to my talking points. I was like, if this is about our mutual friends, here's my boundaries. Here's what I think. Here's what I'm going to keep doing. And then he basically said, okay, well, I'm going to talk to my friends and we'll see. So we ended the phone call, and then like probably about a week later, I get a text message from him saying, I talked to so and so friend and I apologize. Like, I don't think I was treating you fairly. And we left it there. So I decided to do, on the recommendation of everyone else, a second 45-day no contact. I think what had happened was I finished my no contact. I'm trying to remember, the details are fuzzy because I did so many of them. After my first no contact, I think I did reach out with my scripted text. Can I grab your expertise on something? And that was when he first blew up, because I didn't acknowledge the texts while in no contact that he was angry about, and he was still angry at that point. So
Got it. Okay.
I then was like, okay, I got to restart. So then that's when I restarted. But so I don't hear from him for a while, and I found it kind of strange that he had kept the same vacation days that we were supposed to go to. We were going to province over for a vacation together. I had taken time off work. He had, in this process, quit at the company that we were at, but he still decided to go on the trip that we were supposed to go on during the same days in July. So I'm doing my no contact, I'm doing my thing, and he starts, a couple of weeks into July, he starts liking all of my social media posts. So after he apologized to me, he unblocked me.
Okay.
So I was unblocked probably from June, like late June to early July, I think. And he had blocked me again after we talked, before he apologized, because he didn't want to see all my stuff on my sister's page. He's still friends with her on Facebook, which I find kind of weird. But I was blocked probably 3 times fully.
Okay.
So
it's
he
consistent,
was
at least.
constantly back and forth about the blocking me and the unblocking me. So he had unblocked me, and I just decided to leave things as it was for a while. And I decided to distance myself from all of our mutual friends. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to take some actual time to do a proper no contact. So he starts liking my posts on Instagram, and he doesn't follow my account. So every
He
time I
actually
would
has to
post,
look it up.
every time I would post, it would be like within 24 hours, he would go and like the post. And I was like, that's such a weird way of signaling you want to interact with me.
It's a safe way.
It was very low
kinda safe.
investment.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was asking myself, well, do I break no contact and talk to him? And everyone in the group was like, no, you don't do that.
Yeah.
This is a very low investment move. Even though it's consistent, it's low investment.
Right.
So I decided not to break anything. And he reached out to me over text, actually, about a blog post that I'd written. And apparently he went through the trouble of actually reading the whole thing. It was 20 minutes long on my private blog or whatever. And he found it through my Instagram somehow. And he reached out being like, oh, that's a great blog post. And so I was like, oh, thanks. And then left it at that. But he was actually starting to signal interest in me again a little bit as time went on. And I decided that I was, again, in a weird, crazy move, going to go on vacation to the same place as he was going. On the same dates. So I didn't think we would necessarily run into each other.
You took the time off or you had the time off work scheduled, but as he's going also, you decide to go also. So once again, you're manufacturing another run-in. Okay.
A little bit, yeah. So I was trying to do that again, and he, I guess, got wind of the fact that I was going and started texting me a little bit about him being there. And he started with like small talk and whatever, like, oh, like, what a beautiful location. Do you have any recommendations for, places I should go while I'm here since you've been here before? And like, it was kind of, I was like, is this reverse ERP? But as soon as I tried to get any deeper, he was like, we're not there. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a confidant for you at this point. And I took that very hard. I was like, oh no, he doesn't like me. Like, he's just toying with my feelings or whatever. And so then he found out about the whole mutual friend problem, and that caused another problem where he was mad about that. And I can't remember whether I was blocked again, but there was a series of like angry phone calls.
This is what I would notice. I call this a saga. This is like really a long process here.
It was super long. And I think it would have been so much shorter had I simply kept to myself during no contact. Like during my first no contact, I think if I had given him space and time to miss me, we might be in a different place. But
so like a lot of times when I interview people, they talk a lot about their time during no contact. Usually they're talking about sort of the Trinity basics, health, wealth, relationships. Did you do any of that type of work at all? Or did you struggle with doing that because you were just really anxious about him?
No, I actually really committed to the external appearance of doing all of that. So I started going to the gym again, and I'm posting on social media on a regular schedule, and I'm always going out with people, having a great time. Even when I was blocked, I was doing all of that. And I think that's initially what made him curious. Like, I've talked to him now, and he was like, you seem to be doing really well. Like, you were doing all these things without me. And it got me thinking. So I did work the Trinity. I did get myself into a better position, but I think I didn't really deal with some of.
Yeah, well, I think just for me, like, critiquing, I think probably the focus wasn't so much on that when you have, like turning around to the car and then doing like constantly poking the bear with the mutual friends, things like that kind of takes away from that and puts his focus on those things, which makes him angry instead of the nostalgic feelings that you want. But clearly something still worked by doing that. So what's your take on that?
So I think where things reached a bit of a turning point was when we were having these conversations where I basically said, I talked to so-and-so mutual friends, I talked to your ex-girlfriend, and the reason for the outburst was she texted him saying, I heard everything she had to say and I don't want to engage with you anymore.
So basically the girls get together and they kind of share notes, and it's like, holy crap, look, this guy's been taking us for a ride.
Yep.
This, of course, makes the ex-girlfriend here be like, I'm done with you, which of course makes him angry. And then he, of course, needs to blame someone for the anger, and you seem like the easiest target.
And I was, yep. And basically,
you technically did nothing wrong.
I technically didn't. I still think I wouldn't have stirred up so much drama until like after talking to him about it, until after applying some of the better concepts that I learned. And like, I definitely wouldn't have done it again, but I technically didn't do anything wrong either. So
well, I think this just goes to show you can make mistakes throughout the process and still see results, but they kind of prolong those results.
And that's what I would tell anyone. Like, if you're going through this process, sure, like you might think it's a good idea at the time, but I promise you it's not a good idea. Whatever you're thinking of, don't do it.
Well, I mean, you had some extreme examples. Like the best one so far is the balloon, the balloon hitting his car. As if you're trying to be like stealthy, like boom, the balloon just is okay.
Happy birthday. It's her birthday.
Right. So, but eventually there's a turning point that happens. So you mentioned the turning point is like when you start talking to him about some of the stuff with the mutual friends.
Yep. And we started hashing it out. And I basically at this point had decided that I wasn't sure that I wanted him back. With everything that had happened, with the fact
Love
that
to
he
hear
wanted
that.
to blame that he wanted to blame me for a lot of things that I didn't feel I should take the blame for, I decided that I was not going to be apologetic. I was not going to be sappy about anything. So
Finally, you got your power.
I did. And
Wield
that's when
that.
things started changing, because I think he realized, like, oh, she might want nothing to do with me. So at one point, we had a phone call where he was like, okay, this is going to be the last phone call. And then, I need time and space away from you, and you've wrecked everything and whatever. And I was like, okay, fine, we'll have one last phone call. Like, let's do it. Let's have this phone call. So he called me, and I basically said, you lied to me. You've not been a very good friend. Like, here's the reason I said all these things. I had every right to be angry, and I don't, I said, I'm feel like I've cut my losses in a sense. And he was very quiet. And I basically, I thought I was being dramatic. I was in a bar. I was drinking when I was calling him.
Got some liquid courage.
It was really, I thought I was being dramatic. And I was like, look, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm sitting in a bar like 750, 800 kilometers away from you. I don't know what that is in American, but
it's a good amount. Probably like 500-600 miles.
A while. And I was like, and I still know more about you, and I'm still more connected to you than any of these people that you're worried about. So, like, that's that for me, and you can think it over and whatever. So I basically said, have a good night, and I hung up. And we didn't really hash everything out at that point. I left it alone for a while. Eventually, we had a point where we decided to have a text message conversation about everything that had happened. We figured out where some of the misinformation came from. And he, at this point, actually wrote me a very long apology email. So if you thought this couldn't get more dramatic, it absolutely can.
Okay.
So this was in August, I think. Late July, early August.
Almost to October here, so.
August, yeah, I know, August. And he, after hearing everything I had to say, and Anna afterwards, she was like, why did you do that? That was like a closure conversation. Like, that wasn't the best thing you could have done, but I decided to do it anyway. So after our like closure conversation about friends, he sent me this really long email and basically said, I'm really sorry for how I treated you during our relationship. I think that you deserve better. I don't think that I will change my mind. I still don't want to get back together with you because I feel like too much has happened and there's just a lot that I need to process and work through. And so I think I had been coaching at this point for long enough that I realized that's not necessarily true. He's just an avoidant and he's been overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, I appreciate your email. Thank you for sharing how you feel. We'll go our separate ways. And we did. And I cried a lot about it because I was like, what if he never loves me again? What if he's serious?
Fear takes over.
Email. Yeah. He wrote me a whole email.
You keep going back to the email and reading this one part.
Read the email again, read this part where he said he didn't want to get back together like 500 times. And Anna was like, you know what? Just give him time. Just give him time. So I did. I gave him some time, and then right on schedule, about 2 weeks later, he starts liking my Instagram posts again. And
super
then
consistent. He's super
pretty much
consistent.
from there, like he was really consistent about it. And he then messages me at like 3 a.m. about a story I had posted. And this was like a subtle jealousy post because I had a male friend over for dinner and I cooked dinner for the two of us. And I had his like hand in the background. And
gotta love those posts.
That is definitely one of the things that pushed him to message me because, he had made up his mind. He was like, we're not getting back together. But then I immediately jumped right back into my Trinity stuff and going out on dates and going out with people. And inevitably that curiosity just crept up again. And he was like, oh, like, I see you still love pasta as much as you did. I
Oh, okay.
was
It's
like,
like
I
that
think
subtle way
we're
of being like,
doing
I saw the post.
some reminiscing, we're hitting a little bit of that. Um, I remember, and those were things I was looking for in some of his little reach outs that weren't necessarily super high investment. Um, but basically, Anna said, yes, you're still in no contact, but if he responds in a positive way, that is something that you want to encourage. So don't just leave it. Like, make a little bit small talk, make your exit, and just finish your no contact that way if he engages. And I was convinced he wasn't going to, but he did. So then he started engaging me a little bit. I would do my little, oh, gotta go, and duck out of conversations. And
All right. So Zeigarnik effect happening there.
yeah. So I feel like a lot of the principles were good. I just definitely extended it.
Execution was not the best, maybe.
The execution was very bad. But I think what I would say my takeaway from this is that even with all of the mistakes that I made and even with the amount of time, he told me that as an avoidant, like, because he's had a little bit of time to reflect on this now, he's like, you know what? Actually, I don't feel like I was even ready to move on during that 2-3 months that things were really tense, or I guess it was more than 3 months. And he's like, it didn't even cross my mind moving on at that point. He's like, I was definitely busy. I was engaging myself with other stuff, but like in a feeling sense, I hadn't even processed it. So for me, I processed it all in like 2 weeks. But for him, he didn't even start to process or even start to like reminisce at all.
It's funny how that works because like you mentioned that you have some anxiety traits from an anxious attachment. Well, what's interesting is after a breakup, the anxious person begins to process immediately, but the avoidant person does not process at all until time goes by. So what you have is this weird dichotomy where the anxious person has already kind of processed things and they're able to get over it a little bit quicker, as odd as that sounds. I mean, there's like a hyper obsession right after, but by the time they kind of get over it, that's when the avoidant person begins to start processing. And that's where like this weird disconnect happens. So I'm wondering if that's what happened here.
That's exactly what happened. I was like, I'm done. I told Anna, I was like, I'm done with him. That's it. I'm not chasing this man anymore. I'm done trying. This program is, really hard and I don't think it's for me. So I'm just going to move on.
It is hard. Yeah.
And it is. But I think it was when I started to like move on that he was like, oh, wait.
Yeah. Wait, don't go.
So I basically just took it slow. I then started with normal texting phase, pretty much built rapport, used tide theory. I was still single. We were still taking it really slow. And then how we ended up getting back together actually was I noticed that he started coming to me with like emotional things, and I could tell that I was the first person that he would reach out to when something good happened and when something bad happened. And so I made note of that in my mind, where I was like, okay, we're at a point where we're still friends, and he's looking for, or appears to be looking for, girlfriend benefits that he does not get to have at this point.
Doesn't have that yet.
He doesn't have that privilege, right?
You got to put a ring on it for that kind of stuff.
I'm not talking about your date till you marry me. But
we'll talk about that after we stop recording.
So anyways, I did say we had some phone calls. We went from texting to calling, and then we had started dropping a little bit. Oh, like we should maybe go out.
See each other.
Yeah, like see each other, or like, oh, like so and so has a thing going on. in a few weeks or like a month from now, there's another car show or whatever, like some mutual interests. So during one of our phone calls, he definitely got into his feelings about some things. And it wasn't specific to me, it was just too much for me to handle. So I said, I need a day to think about it. And I stopped talking to him for a couple of days. And then I said, okay, I'd like to call you. So I called him and I said, I don't want to be friends with you. And he got super mad. He was like, well, then why did you bother sticking around in my life? And why did you talk to all my friends? And like, what was the point of all of this then? And I was like, no, you moron. Like, I don't want to be friends with you.
I want to be more than friends.
Yeah, I was like, I still have some feelings for you. I still like you. And he like went all quiet and he was like, oh.
Oh.
And he was like, I did not want to allow myself to hope. So even where you thought you were dropping really obvious hints during texting phase, even though you thought you were dropping really obvious hints during calling, he's like, I did not want to allow myself to hope. And I was hoping that time would work it out in my favor. He's like, I was hoping that maybe, we could meet up. And then if things went well, like maybe I could ask you for coffee or something. So I guess what I took as disinterest was actually just him not wanting to
move
push
things
the limit a little bit or move things too fast. And he still expressed that to me. He was like, look, I don't want to rush anything. I feel like I need to process still. But he said, let me take you for coffee. So we went for coffee and that was really great. And then we just started hanging out again. And then he like met my dog and he asked me to be his girlfriend again on like late September, I guess, maybe mid-September.
All right, so we're literally we're caught up a month after now.
Yeah, just about a month ago.
And you mentioned you're looking at apartments.
We are, yeah. He's come to me with all of this. Basically, he said the reason I re-engaged with you was you seemed different when I would engage you on things. You responded differently. You were more lighthearted about things, and you didn't take everything so seriously or so crazy. And he was like, I kept wanting to talk to you because you kept making like jokes and small talk and things that I was really comfortable with. So he said he was really, really curious about that. And I guess the point is like the emotional stuff is supposed to come later. And especially for him, it was important that it did. He did not want to end up in the same mess that we were in before. So since then, like we've been working through, and we've had a couple of fights, but we've handled them very differently. Where I've been like, okay, you know what? I think we need a minute. We'll come back to this in a few hours or tomorrow or whatever. And if you can't see me, I'm like, you know what? No problem. You can't see me today. Go see your friends. Go do whatever. And that's something that he was like, oh yeah, this is something I still want in my life, because I guess everyone kind of looks for what's in it for them. And in that sense, he realized he would have a greater sense of freedom to make decisions without fearing the anxious consequences, essentially. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I think we should move in together. I think we should, do all these things that we were planning to do. And that's come over the last week or so. He was still like kind of inching things like, oh, I know we're moving to the same place. Our leases are up around the same time. I've got a male friend that I could move in with, or, we could look at somewhere.
Yeah, let's look around a little bit.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, like, you want to move in with me? And I could have been like, yes, let's move in. Let's do all these things. But I was like, I'll think about it. I'll entertain it. And if we find somewhere, then maybe we could think about it.
But like deep down inside, you're like, yes.
I know, right? And I'm trying to, I've learned I just have to hold my horses. If I get too excited and I get too pushy, that's where.
Yeah, I think I think a good rule for you going forward is if they pull back, you pull back sort of ideal,
Mhm.
because that's something that will feel that they feel like you're giving them space. So like you mentioned, like if he wants to go out with friends, you're kind of not as taking offense to, well, why aren't you hanging out with me instead of
Right.
them? But allowing them to do that kind of when they pull back, you pull back a little bit. That you'll find with, especially with avoidant personalities, that works really, really well. And you kind
And
of figured that out.
it works like magic. I think like if I really want results,
And the beauty is
I'm
if he
gonna just
watches this interview, it will still be effective. I promise you, it will still be
oh yeah.
effective.
I'll be
Like,
like,
dude,
that's
I'm
my
telling
girl.
you, this is what she's doing, and I'm telling you, it's going to work on you. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, and that's basically it. When I told him about coaching with Anna and everything else, he's like, man, I could be mad that I was a little bit hoodwinked, but he's like, but it's still meeting all of my needs. So I don't feel like that, is something that I'm gonna worry about. He's like, I
That's
still feel
good.
like we have the relationship that we want to have. And I feel comfortable finally to approach you with things instead of feeling like you're always nagging me or pressing me for information or telling me to share or open up my feelings and things like that.
So looking back, what do you think was like the most important key component to your success?
Mm, definitely could have had more emotional control, but I think emotional
Okay.
control in the end was something that sort
For
of
you
salvaged
especially.
some of those situations.
Okay.
But I also think, um, what was key to success? I think working that Trinity, doing all that stuff, even when you think they're not looking. I was hard blocked, and he definitely was checking on me. So he
I
was
tell
seeing all
people
the
that,
stuff
but
that
they
I was
never
doing.
believe it.
No,
You
and I
can't
didn't
even
believe it.
believe
I
it.
was like, there's no way. Everyone else, I can believe that was hard blocked. Everyone else, I'll believe that their ex is checking their page, not mine. No, he was. And I busted him one time for it. And he's subsequently admitted to me, yes, I was stalking your Instagram when I had blocked you because I was mad at you, but I wanted to know what you were doing and if you were doing things that were going to make me more mad. So I think in a certain way, it was like he had not caught up in the process to like the grieving part. He was like, I was mad and I just wanted to see if you were doing anything that was going to make me more mad.
Well, it's interesting. It's almost like he was going through the 5 stages of grief, but stuck in that anger stage because of all the
Yeah.
things that you're doing. Like he wants to move on to the next stage, but you keep pulling him back to that anger stage, you know?
And that was my bad in some ways. I think I did definitely poke the bear in some ways. Um,
It's
but
interesting. I got to think about that because there's always something you can learn from people when they do things, quote unquote, not the correct way, because
yeah,
you got a positive result in the end. So it's interesting.
I think it was ultimately like it wasn't about what I was doing so much as how I was doing it. And I think the program has definitely, from the first time that I used it to now, it's definitely shifted a lot more towards you have to have that attitude change. You have to have that
Mhm.
intangible. And in some ways, you really have to just decide at a certain point, I'm moving on. Because it
Yep.
wasn't until I had that emotional shift to like, I don't know if I want him back. I don't even know if he fits my current goals and my coaching goals and my therapy goals, my life goals, where that was, I felt the switch. It's not just something you can manufacture with exactly the right wording always, but I felt like the way things are structured, the way that Kirsty does her texting guide, for example, like it's all very, it's meant to sort of give you that confidence of
Mhm.
emotional control and doing things the right way. So
Well, it's beautiful. I don't know. There's not a better testimonial than that. Like I try to tell people the key to no contact is to outgrow your ex. Like that's the mentality that you need to have, but people
it
never
is,
get
yeah.
it.
I really think that
I think
that's
so. Sophie, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate this. This is really intriguing story. I love all the twists and turns. I love how you're full blocked and then you get unblocked and then you kind of break up again. And then there's the ex-girlfriend and then you kind of talk and share. I love it all.
yeah, it was a really wild ride, but I think like in hindsight, a lot of the things that he's shared on his own and a lot of the things that we've talked about now being back together, are all things I learned during ERP. Like,
We
need
will
space.
gladly take credit for that.
Definitely.
Thank
Like,
you.
he was like, I needed that space. Like, I don't think people understand how much space avoidants actually need and how much time they actually need. People get afraid, like, 45 days, what if he forgets about me? He's like, I wasn't even close to forgetting
I
about
know.
you at 45
know.
days, right? So just, I think it even in telling him about the program, he's like, it actually helps me feel like there was some people advocating for me too, where it wasn't just that you were trying to get me back, but also it was there were people that were actively supporting you into better habits and into like person that's ready now for the relationship that we have.
The funny part is almost no one has good relationship habits. Almost no one like, gives people space because they want to fix things right away. But yeah, thank you. This was amazing. I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, Chris. I'm super happy to be a success story, and I really think that going forward, I will continue to apply a lot of the principles, a lot of the things that I learned, and I recommend this program to everyone that I meet, everyone that I'm like, oh, you've been through a breakup, I have something for you. Because
Thank you.
I know my instincts would never have gotten me to this place. I can be fully honest in saying, like, I would have continued to make all the worst mistakes, and I don't think that I would be in a healthier and happier relationship now for it. Yeah.